Esperanza Rising, Colonization, and Revolution. In 1517, the Spaniards conquered the indigenous people of Mexico. The Spaniards ruled for the next 300 years. Those whose ancestors were Spanish ruled and were wealthy. Those whose ancestors were both Spanish and indigenous people, called mestizos, held less power and wealth. The indigenous population had the least amount of wealth and power, and some were enslaved. Land that had originally belonged to the indigenous people now belonged to the Spanish. The indigenous people were forced to work for the rich Spanish landowners. Eventually, Spain lost control of Mexico. The Mestizos rebelled and broke from Spain in a revolution that lasted from 1810 to 1820. For the next 100 years, life did not substantially improve for many indigenous people and peasants. The very rich held all the power, and the majority of the population was poor. While the Mestizos gained some wealth, people with Spanish ancestry still owned most of the land and were in charge of the country. Then, in 1910, came the Mexican Revolution. The ruler at this time was a dictator named Porfirio Diaz. His goal was to create a more modern Mexico, but peasants and farm workers who tended to be indigenous suffered as he focused on building new factories, roads, and dams and creating a modern society. Diaz also created new land laws that only benefited only the wealthy, who tended to have Spanish ancestry and often took land away from indigenous communities. Small farmers who felt they had no other option led the revolution. Over the next 7 years, many new Mexican presidents came and went. The country remained unstable, and much of the population remained unhappy. In 1917, the Constitution of Mexico was created. Although this was viewed as the official end of the revolution, fighting continued. While Diaz was gone, many people who had lost their land did not get it back. The war was over long before the majority of Esperanza Rising take place, but there were still many people who had bitter feelings towards the landowners.